I'm a little bit nervous for this because I know the art community can be a little bit vicious sometimes, just a little bit, but I actually think that a lot of these are controversial, like actually controversial, so let's just get right into it. So first off, I don't think that anatomy matters in certain contexts. Adventure Time is a great example of an art style that doesn't adhere to like perfect anatomy. Like the anatomy is still there, but it's obviously not like super perfect, which I think adds to it. Also, I don't think you need to learn perfect anatomy if your art style doesn't call for it. Like, I don't agree with the learning rules before you break them thing. Like, I just don't agree with that. Why bother learning realism if your end goal is a cartoony style? I feel like it's the same thing, and I don't really understand why people don't agree with me with this. So yeah. So second, I'm a little scared to say this one. I feel like this might get me in a little bit of hot water, but I think that realism is really, really impressive and takes a lot of skill, but I also think it's kind of boring. I'm sorry. Like, I know this isn't the most controversial thing ever to say in the art community, but I feel like outside of the art community, this is really controversial. Learning realism is hard, like, don't get me wrong, like, I understand the practice it takes. It's really hard to fully replicate a picture, but I think it's boring. I'm not trying to belittle realism artists because I do respect it. Like, I respect what they do. I think it's impressive. But I feel like you're not using your imagination the most when copying from real life. That's not to say I don't have any realism artists that I like. There's this one person on TikTok that makes, like, realism and makes it a little bit more absurd. If I can find this TikToker, I will put them on screen right now. Hi! That's only if I put it on screen. But yeah, like, you're able to do it, but I feel like people just don't go there. Like, they don't use their imagination enough to add on to the realism. So, number 3, worrying about finding your art style is a waste of time. So, I know it's hard to not have one when you really, really, really want one, especially when people around you are claiming that this is my art style, I finally found my art style. Or, like, really famous artists have, like, a very distinct style that they always stick to. If you just keep drawing, you'll stick to certain parts of your art. One day, you decide you really like how these eyes look, or how this hair shading looks. It's a natural progression and shouldn't be rushed because I feel like it'll feel forced. At least that's what I've gone through personally. I used to really rush trying to find my style, and it's not like I don't want to find my style anymore. Like, it could be fun to find something I really like. You know, I feel like that's definitely part of it. But I'm really not worried about it. I'm really not. And I feel like a lot of different artists need to just, like, take a minute, take a breath, and just accept that art is a progression. So, number 4, I think that art style being categorized into types and genre is kind of dumb and gets rid of individuality. Like, people will straight up ask other artists, what's your art style called? What's this art style called? Not everything has to be categorized like that into, like, aesthetics or types or styles. Like, personally, I think it waters down people's uniqueness, in my opinion. Like, genuinely, the amount of times I've seen people copy each other's art styles to the point where it's like everything looks the same, I think that's really sad because it's getting rid of people's uniqueness. So, number 5, I think that diversity in art is like one of the most important things in art. And I mean that in like every single way. Diversity of trying different mediums, diversity of people of color and different races, different species if you're doing like animal stuff. Just like people should try everything to see what they enjoy. I also get that it's easy to draw the same things like body types and faces. Like, that's why so many people have same face syndrome a little bit. Like, they make the same faces over and over and over again because they're comfortable with it. But I feel like to become a more rounded person, you should try to branch out more and like draw stuff you're not super comfortable with. And who knows, maybe you'll find you enjoy drawing this type of thing and this type of person a lot more. So I think it's just good to branch out out and try new things. So my sixth controversial opinion is supplies do not equal talent. Like, I've seen so many people on TikTok, RIP by the way, I'm gonna miss it. I'm gonna miss it so much. So many people on TikTok ask other people what their pencils are, and so many times they're just regular pencils. Art supplies aren't magically going to make your art better. Like, you have to put in the work to learn, and you don't need expensive items to learn. Like, you don't need the best watercolor pencils to be the best watercolor artist. Like, that's just not how that works. If you put in the effort and time, your art will be better to you, and that's what's most important. So number 7, I might make some people mad with this one. So I personally think traditional is not harder than digital. Like, I don't think you can really compare the two. They're both like visual art, but in the same way that video games and paintings are both visual art. They're just completely different, and I don't see how people can compare the two. Like, they're two different mediums and two different experiences. And I feel like traditional artists look down on digital artists for absolutely no reason because they have no undo button and they're jealous. I think that's such a bad reason to look down on digital artists. It's a completely different experience, and I don't understand how people don't understand that. It really is like comparing apples to oranges. Like, they're completely different. So, number 8, I think drawing only conventionally attractive people is boring. I just think it's boring. I'm sorry. I really do. When I see tens of hundreds of basic faces, it gets a little boring. I'm not saying that it's bad art or that people shouldn't do that, but I want to see more diversity. I want to see people with lazy eyes. I want to see people with weak chins. I want to see anything other than perfect looking portraits. That just goes back to my other point. Like, diversity is the most important thing in art, in my opinion. Like, I think it's so important just to make a more rich culture. Speaking of not making people look perfect, number 9, people don't draw emotions other than happiness enough, or push their expressions. People like lightly crying when they should be sobbing over a super devastatingly tragic event looks silly to me. I will admit I did this when I first started out. Like, I feel like it's very easy to do when you're first starting out, just because you don't want to draw that many lines, you don't want it to look weird because you're not confident enough. And maybe you think my art style is too simple for that, and I think that's also silly, a little bit, just a little bit. I personally at some point realized I could portray emotions so much better if I just pushed the shapes in the face. Like, exaggerate stuff. Experiment. That's what art is all about. And number 10, I might also get in hot water with this one. I think tracing is totally fine. Like, real life people stuff is just 100% on the table. Tracing real life people is 100% fine. I do not see the problem with that. Look at old animation and rotoscoping. Like, it was all traced to get the movement and stuff. Why is it any different tracing poses for art, like still images? I don't see the difference at all. I also think tracing other people's work to learn is fine, but absolutely never ever claim stuff as your own, obviously. Like, you wouldn't go posting it like, I drew this. You wouldn't want to do that. If you wanted to upload it, maybe you could be like, I'm doing a study of this, and you're trying to like shade it in the way that the other person shaded, and you just traced it to get the basic image. I think that's fine. Other than that, I feel like you should not claim it as your own, obviously. But not only does it help you learn shapes faster if you break up the references properly, which you can learn how to do by watching my video on it, not only does it help you learn shapes faster, but it also helps your wrist get used to drawing certain shapes. So yeah, that was my 10 controversial opinions. Please don't kill me. I'm very afraid of you all after the little Simsy video. Please don't be mean to me. Okay, thank you all so much for watching. Bye!